A hidden letter in a bookstore rewrote my mother in my heart. The bell over the door made a tired little sound, like a sigh that had grown old in this place. It was late afternoon, the kind of hour when the sun slides through the front windows of Maple Street Books and lays itself down in long, golden strips across the floor. Dust hung in the light, drifting the way slow snow drifts when the wind is careful with it. The aisles were narrow and close. Paper whispered. Somewhere near the back, a radio played a song from another decade, thin and soft, as if it, too, didn't want to disturb the past. June had come in for the same reason she always came: habit, comfort, and something that wasn't exactly loneliness, but close enough to sit at the same table. She was 58 now, and after her mother's passing in spring, the world felt as if it had lost a layer of warmth. Not heat, just warmth, the small, ordinary kind you only feel when someone you love is in the next room doing nothing in particular. She told herself she was here to find a book for the train ride home. But what she wanted was a place where nothing had to be decided for a little while, where pages were patient and nobody asked her to be strong. She slipped down the aisle of memoirs and old travelogues, men crossing deserts, women crossing oceans, people making sense of what they had left behind. The tall owner, Mr. Patel, gave her a gentle nod from the counter, his spectacles sliding down his nose in a way that would have made her mother scold him and reach for a handkerchief. "Take your time," he always said, as if time were something he kept in the back room with the extra paper bags. June ran her fingers along the cracked spines, the leather that had softened under too many hands, the cloth that had faded into thrift store shades of blue and green. When she reached the end of the shelf, one book sat crooked, as if nudged and then forgotten, a green hardcover with no dust jacket, its title stamped in gold that had been rubbed almost to nothing. The only word she could still make out was letters, though whether it was in the title or just a lucky gift of the moment, she couldn't say. She pulled the book free. It had weight, the way old things do, weight made of more than paper. The cover smelled faintly of lemon oil and attic air. June's mother had used the same furniture polish every Saturday morning, kneeling by the coffee table with a rag that had once been part of a sheet, singing quietly to herself while the scent pooled in the room like sunlight. The memory brushed past June and kept walking, as memories do. She opened the book. Its pages were thick and a little stiff, the edges deckled. There were pencil marks in the margins, neat notes, someone's mild arguments and small revelations preserved in the faint gray strokes of a careful hand. At page 73, the top corner was turned down. It felt like a finger tapping her elbow. She smoothed the fold and found, tucked against the spine, an envelope the color of tea with too much milk. It was thin and plain, and the flap had never been sealed. On the front, in blue ink gone soft with time, a name was written. June stopped breathing. For a second, what she saw was only letters in shape and curve. Then, like a face turning toward her across a crowded room, the name resolved itself: her mother. She closed the book, not quickly, but with a tender, practiced motion, as if she were laying a blanket over a sleeping child. The store around her seemed to tilt, the way a room does when the past walks in. Mr. Patel looked up as if he'd felt a draft. June raised the book at him, an old rescue sign: "I'm fine, just a question." He lifted his hand in a little wave that meant what it always meant: "Take your time, you're safe here." She slid onto the small stool in the back corner where the gardening guides were stacked like compact, patient people. The stool wobbled and then decided to behave. June laid the book in her lap, set her hand over the envelope, and felt the lightest tremor rise from somewhere deeper than her bones. Her mother's name, written by someone June did not yet know. That was the first surprise. But the second, and larger one, was the feeling that came with it, a feeling not of dread, but of a door opening in a hallway she had walked 1,000 times without ever seeing a knob. She thought of her mother's hands. They were small and square-palmed, soft with dishwater and the work of breakfasts and school flyers and hemming skirts late at night. They had been kind when June scraped her knees, brisk when she lagged behind, steady when the ferry heaved in winter water. In hospital light this spring, those hands had looked like a map of everything they had done for a family more than a life. But there were parts of her mother June had never learned by heart, the 10 years before she came to this country, the way a certain song could make her stare at the wall over the sink for a long time. The questions she answered with silence because silence seemed to say enough. June slid the envelope out. Inside lay a single sheet, folded in thirds, the paper thin as the idea of a moth's wing. When she unfolded it, the crease lines held for a moment, then relaxed with a soft crackle. The handwriting was tidy but unpolished, like a person who had learned to dance in the kitchen rather than a ballroom. The date in the corner was written in another calendar, then crossed out and rewritten the way they taught at the refugee classes, September 16, 1977. June swallowed. She could hear the radio's thin music, the hum of the cooler, the mutter of cars outside. She could hear, too, a clock that wasn't in the room, a slow, patient clock that had kept time in the space between her and her mother. She glanced toward the counter. Mr. Patel was helping a boy count coins for a paperback mystery. It was an ordinary afternoon. It was also the kind that sits quietly at the edge of your life and waits for you to notice it has a gift in its lap. The first line wasn't a greeting. It was a sentence lost in the middle of a thought, as if the writer had begun the letter before picking up a pen. I dreamed we were standing by the river again, and your hair smelled like soap. June felt something press against her ribs from the inside, surprise, sorrow, and a small, steady warmth that hadn't been there a moment ago. She read the line again. Soap. Her mother had kept bars of jasmine soap in her drawers. When June was small and frightened of storms, Ma would lift a dresser drawer and let her smell the sweetness until the thunder forgot her name. She didn't know that inside that envelope, a lifetime of love waited to be discovered. She only knew that she was going to turn the page of a day she had thought she already knew by heart. I dreamed we were standing by the river again, and your hair smelled like soap. The letter went on without greetings or apologies, as if they belonged to two people who didn't need to introduce themselves anymore. You laughed at the way the ferry coughed when it tried to start. You said this river has old lungs, but it still carries everyone who asks. I have replayed that for months, my. I don't know if the river remembers us, but I remember the color of your dress, green like the bottle glass we picked out of the sand near the shipyard. I remember you wore your watch with the face inside your wrist, because you said time isn't for showing off, it's for checking, quickly, when no one is looking. June could hear the ferry's engine in the letter, could almost smell diesel and rain. Her mother used to make jokes about seasick tourists and then hand them lemon slices from a pocketed apron. People are all the same when they're pale, she would say, and laugh a laugh that told you she had seen worse things than bad weather. The writing was careful, the lines straight. There were small imperfections, letters that leaned or dipped, an ink blot where a thought must have paused and then gone forward again. I'm learning the new words. Picture and appointment and savings. The teacher says my tongue sits too far back. She taps the air and tells me to stand up straighter even when I'm sitting down. Mr. Tran got me work near the cannery, but only until the winter. It's cold here in the morning. I wear the scarf you left. It is the only green thing on the walk from the bus. June moved her lips without sound, as if she could taste the sentences. This was a man, she felt certain, a man trying to make a life behave. Not a young boy, not an old one. Somewhere in the strong, uncertain middle. The voice was gentle in a way that did not ask for praise. He did not sign his name at the end of every page, but he wrote it once in the corner as if he couldn't bear the thought of the letter getting lost without a way for it to call him back. On. Her mother had never mentioned an on. But there were many names June had never heard, because the past has a polite way of changing the subject when you look at it too hard. You told me to write even if I had nothing new to say. So I will tell you the small things. There is a woman in the market who sells oranges that taste like the sun found a window. The landlord keeps the hallway too dark, but the child downstairs chalks flowers on the step where the light reaches. When I am homesick, I watch the bus doors open and close, like lungs. I say to myself, all of this is breathing. If we keep breathing, we will find each other again. At the edge of the page, there was a drawing. Not good, not bad, just honest, a fairy shaped like a loaf of bread, a river that looked like a tablecloth, two stick figures with a space between them approximately the width of a street. June smiled before she could stop herself. Tears, when they came not as a flood but in a fine, steady rain that did not frighten anyone. Then the letter grew quieter. The lines tightened, the spaces narrowed, as if the writer had leaned closer to the paper without realizing it. Your mother did not forgive me. I understand. I was the boy who asked for a promise and then left you with the promise still in your hand. But I want you to know I did not leave to be free of you. I left to be worthy of you. There is a difference, and I believe you know it because you held up my head in the boat when I was too sick to pretend. I whispered I am sorry into your hair that night, and you said just live, and we will count that as enough. I am trying to live, my. If living becomes a way back to you, I will take the bus, the ferry, the long walk. If living becomes the only thing I can do for you, I will do it well. June felt herself leaning, too. She could hear her mother's voice under those words, low and sure, just live. Her mother had said that to June once in a different language after June's father left when she was 14. He had moved 3 cities away with a woman who laughed like bright water. We will live, Ma said to her daughter in the kitchen, setting down 2 bowls of rice. We will count that as enough. At 14, the words sounded small. At 58, they sounded like the floor you learned to trust after the earthquake. There was a paragraph about winter. The way cold travels through stairwells. The way Sundays stretch. The way a person learns to talk to himself without scaring the neighbors. I applied for the factory on 8th Street. The man at the desk said I need a reference. I gave him Mr. Tran and the priest and the manager of the ferry. He laughed when I said the ferry, but he wrote it down. I am not proud of the smell that follows me home, but I think pride is a shirt I can wear later. For now, I will wash and sleep and wake up, and this will become a path if I walk it long enough. The next page wasn't exactly a page. It was a half sheet, perhaps added later, tucked in with the others so neatly that it took June a moment to notice the difference. The paper was thinner, almost translucent. The ink on it was a shade darker, or maybe it only seemed that way because the words felt bolder. I saw your mother at the market. She did not look at me. I stood with my hands in my pockets the way a boy stands when he's not sure if he is allowed to speak. I wanted to say I will make a home. I wanted to say I will learn to cook the way you like your eggs, and I will put the cilantro on only after the pan is off the heat so it does not turn bitter. I wanted to say I am not your past's enemy. I am only a man with a soft hand and a louder heart when I am near you. But your mother had a strength about her that day I had not seen before. She looked like a window that has decided not to open no matter how many times summer asks. I am trying to respect that window. But sometimes I stand outside and look up, and I think the air on the other side must be kinder than the air I am breathing. June held that image. A young man in a new city, watching a window, practicing patience as if it were a trade. She thought of her own grandmother, small and fierce, who had once smacked a mosquito on her arm and declared, "No more blood for the past." It was not hard to imagine her saying no to a boy named Dom with a scarf and good intentions. At the bottom of the last page, the handwriting slowed again. There was a sentence that began with certainty and ended without a period, as if the pen had lifted itself away. If I do not hear from you by the end of the month, I will wait by the river on the first Sunday of October, by the old ferry sign where the paint is peeling like. The line stopped. There was no more. June turned the sheet over, then the page before it, then the envelope, as if an answer might have slipped off and fallen somewhere it didn't belong. But there was nothing else. Only the quiet weight of an unfinished thought and a place by the water where paint peeled in a way that mattered to someone. June sat very still. She could feel the store's ordinary life moving around her. The bell rang. A woman laughed with her friend at the price of an antique cookbook. A child asked if coins could be traded for a dog if the dog was in a picture. The letter lay open in June's lap like a small, honest boat. And she understood there was a shore she had not reached yet. The first Sunday of October lingered in June's mind like a tide thread. In her hometown, a river ran, a ferry crossed, and a tired sign stood, its paint peeling even when she was a girl tossing pebbles. At the bookstore, she asked Mr. Patel about the book. He turned it over. Estate donation, he said. A teacher on Alder Street. Died last winter. 12 boxes, her handwriting like letters, old friends, second shelf. Poems for rainy days. Her name was Mrs. Bell. He wrote it down gently. June bought the book and walked past the park where a band played in July. The light was golden. A window opened, a man laughed. June thought of an unfinished sentence and the fairy sign. At home, she made tea, the kettle's hum ordinary. She touched the letter's edge, hesitant. June and her mother, my, were different, June open, my guarded, her feelings boxed as later. After June's father left, Mai's voice was a cupboard barely opened. We will live, she'd said, a plan and a blessing, but to June, it felt like forgetting. The letter bore Mai's name. Who wrote it? Why was it in the book? The mystery needed shoes, a bus, and soft questions. On Sunday, it rained patiently. June, in her mother's scarf, took the bus to the river. The town looked older, new paint, same fences. The fairy sign stood, faded but faithful. A man sat on a bench, eating an orange, its peel a bright moon. His coat was mended, his eyes kind. Rain doesn't keep you away, he said. I grew up here, June replied. Some places know you. He nodded. The fairy shook. My brother said it had a bad morning. He smiled. You live here? Across town. I came with my mother. He folded the peel into an old bus transfer. Mothers, he said. We learn their language forever. June asked, did you know Mai, saying her mother's full name? He paused, face open. I did, long ago. Her name's folded in my coat. They spoke without needing proof. He'd arrived in the 70s, lived with 3 men, saved every note with Mai's name. She never mentioned you, June said. She said some chapters are written in pencil. I wrote letters, he said. Some sent, some kept, some given to the river. I waited here Sundays, unsure of time's direction. She married my father, June said. Life filled with new things. She was strong, afraid, and folded the past carefully. He nodded. She was careful with what could break. He saw Mai in June's words. I'm glad she had a child. I'm the child, June said. I think she loved you, in a way that changed rooms. He looked at the river. I loved her too. Love can be a street you keep clean, a light left on. They didn't hug. June took the orange peel, tucking it into her scarf. On the bus, windows fogged, a tune hummed. Rain wrote fleeting letters on the glass. At home, June reread the letter's unfinished line. Its emptiness was a path, not a void. She folded it, her heart full of new peace. Days passed the way proper days do, eggs and radio and the search for a place to set your keys. June found herself moving through them with a lightness that surprised her. It was not joy, exactly, joy is a bird that comes when it wants. It was more like the loosened seam of an old shirt, something you barely notice at first, until you realize you can move your shoulders without thinking about it. She went back to Maple Street Books with a small bouquet of backyard basil tied with twine. For the counter, she told Mr. Patel, who sniffed the leaves and declared that some smells are more faithful than clocks. She left a note for anyone who might have known Mrs. Bell. If you remember how she came by a green book of letters, please call. A day later, the phone rang. It was Mrs. Bell's niece, whose voice carried the calm competence of people who label their moving boxes before they ever assemble them. Aunt Ruth taught English for 30 years, the niece said. She ran a little exchange shelf in her classroom. Students would leave books when they were finished and take books when they were not. Sometimes they left notes inside, some sweet, some unwise. She kept the ones that felt like prayers. There was a pause that sounded like the niece was opening a drawer in her memory. She had a friend at church, an older woman named Mai, who helped the refugee families find apartments in the 70s. Aunt Ruth told me once that when the past is heavy, you don't throw it away, you redistribute it. I think the book you found is part of that redistributing. June wrote down the niece's words. She took them out later and read them the way she had been reading the letter, slowly, as if they were medicine that knew where to go. She called the man from the river once. They didn't speak long. They did not trade every detail of their lives. They didn't need to. I wanted to tell you, she said, that when I peeled an orange today, the room smelled like a story. He chuckled, and she heard in it a long hallway of Sundays. I wanted to tell you, he answered, that I found a bar of jasmine soap at the market. It will make the drawer kind in winter. They shared a silence that felt full, not empty, and promised to say hello again if they met by the water. At home, June began to see her mother not as a puzzle she had failed to solve, but as a person who had carried a great deal and set it down in ways that kept them both from tripping. She thought of the night her mother had stood at the sink, hands in the dishwater, listening to a song and staring at the wall with a softness that worried June at the time. Now she pictured a ferry in their kitchen, an old engine coughing to start, a river that had agreed to carry yet another small boat across a wide distance. She and her mother had not spoken of everything. But a letter in a bookstore had done what time and effort sometimes can't. It reached back and forward at once, touched two hands, and reminded them they had always been connected by the ordinary work of living. Love had not failed because it had changed rooms. It had not disappeared because it had folded itself to fit inside the lives they made. It had been there in the quiet resilience of dinners cooked even when nobody was hungry. In the scarf put around a neck that insisted it didn't need it. In the way a woman saved a bar of good soap for months because its smell made storms feel small. June began to keep small rituals. She placed the letter in a folder lined with tissue, not to hide it but to honor it. On Sundays, she walked to the river even when the sky said maybe don't. She stood by the sign and watched the ferry bring strangers from one side to the other, the way love brings people through their days without making a fuss about it. Sometimes she brought an orange and peeled it slowly, laying the skin on the bench like a small son. Sometimes she carried a bar of jasmine soap in her coat pocket and pressed her thumb against it the way people press their thumbs against rosary beads or old coins with faces that have looked out for them. Once, she dreamt of her mother standing in a kitchen that was every kitchen they had ever had. Mai turned and lifted her hand the way she did when she wanted quiet without making anyone feel scolded. We will live, she said, but this time the words sounded like the opposite of refusal. They sounded generous, as if life itself were the gift she had been trying to wrap for her daughter with the paper she had. In the dream, June said, I know, and the kettle sang its ordinary song, and the dream released her gently back into morning. A month later, June found herself in the bookstore again, the light slanting in, the dust like soft confetti, the bell's tired little sigh welcoming whoever came to look for company among strangers' words. She brought Mr. Patel a small envelope. Inside were two things, a copy of the letter, and a note that said, for the shelf that catches the books that want to be found. Are you sure? He asked, the way people ask when they hope the answer will be yes for reasons that are about more than inventory. I am, she said. Some love stories never end. They just wait where someone can find them. She didn't have to explain what she meant. The best stories are the ones you don't have to explain once the heart has heard them. That evening, June made soup the way her mother used to, broth that took its time, ginger that warmed without waving its arms, cilantro at the end so it stayed bright. She ate with the window open to let the cool in, because comfort behaves better when it has a little space. Rain started again, polite and steady. She thought of all the unfinished sentences in the world and how many of them end in kindness if we let them. When the dishes were done, she turned off the kitchen light and stood in the doorway for a moment, listening to the house breathe. It breathed like the bus doors opening and closing in the letter, like a small river made of walls and windows. She felt no dramatic new story writing itself inside her. She felt something quieter, something that sounded like peace. Paper rustled on the table where she had left the folder. The kettle clicked as it cooled. A car passed with its wipers talking to the glass in the same old rhythm. June put on her mother's scarf, just for a minute, then folded it back in the drawer with the soap whose smell didn't run out, not really. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more forgotten letters and timeless memories. Have you ever found something from the past that changed how you saw life? Share your story in the comments. Your words might comfort someone else. Thank you for listening with such a kind heart. Please like the video, subscribe, and until we meet again.